podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Video podcasting to you from my field here in beautiful rural Ireland. I'm Trev Downey, and this is another bonus out of season edition of the Transfer Podcast with myself and Dave Davis. And we're going to justify our existence by talking a little bit about the current setup. But of course, you have an ulterior motive, as we always do, because we want to drive the conversation towards what might be able to change, what we could change, what potentially may happen in terms of changes, with January not all that far away. So before we do anything else, we should pause and say hello to the main man, Dave Davis. How you doing, buddy?
Trev, it's like 2009, Friends reunited again, isn't it, mate? So a pleasure to see you as ever, eh?
Yes, yeah, these little gaps only make it better when we get to do a little bit of a chat. So we're going to focus today on what you called the midfield minefield, because nothing has triggered more conversation, with the exception perhaps of Darwin Núñez. Nothing has triggered more conversation than what is the best combination of midfielders, who people rate, who they don't rate, what was value for money in terms of the transfers that we did get in. Did we leave ourselves short? Is that a fatal failing? And yet here we are, a point off the top, Dave, with a game against the team that are top next. And I get giddy even thinking of the potential that we could actually ease past them. And then I think some of the people who are absolutely, and I include you in this, my friend, written the title chances off completely, might even have to think, shit, is it an opportunity? Is it a possibility with ourselves deep in November and a point ahead, or 2 points ahead, or whatever it will be at that point? Anyway, this is all speculation and for the latter part of our show today. So what we're going to do to kind of drive the discussion here is to go through what I think Dave and Martin saying is our 7 midfielders. We've nominally, at least in the squad on the official website, 7 midfielders. Does that seem fair to you to say that that's the number?
Yeah, I'm always sort of paused to say 7 or 8 because I think Thiago's got half a leg left, hasn't he, Trev? So let's call it 7.5 for now, something like that.
Yes, yeah. I too was writing Thiago off. Or was it the part of me that thinks that Harvey Elliott is not a midfielder? One of those things was kicking in when I was saying 7. But look, we do have an opportunity to take them player by player. And our goal here, folks, is to land on what we think is going to be the best trio, and then the best trio specifically for City. But that is a long way off in the future. We're going to go through our midfield personnel, and we're going to end up then with what you all love, a bit of a rating of each at the end. But we'll hold fire on the ratings and talk about each one of them first. Look, the star of the show has been Dom Szoboszlai, Dave. There's no two ways about that. His form fell off a cliff the game before last. 2 games before last was poor, then in the game before last, and then in the previous game, the game where we just actually managed to win, he was back to something like his absolutely imperious self, if not quite at the levels that he had been before. But I think overall the turnaround in terms of what we've gotten out of this kid in terms of value and in terms of contribution is pretty undeniable. Most people, you notably on the last one, came up with some very choice expressions to describe your fondness for this kid. I think it's a no-brainer that Dom's going to be one of our 3 for both of us. Or I mean, am I talking you into places you don't want to go? Did you see something to worry about in those recent games where there was an absence of form? Talk to me a little bit about Szoboszlai and your take on him and what he's contributed and whether he is absolutely nailed on going forward.
Yeah, I think he is, Trev. In the midfield, he's the first name on the team sheet, nice and easy. For me, there's zero debate across the board. I think it's that straightforward. I mean, when I even look at this kid, I actually think, he's the best midfielders in. He's the best number 8. He'd be the best number 10. And do you want me to be deadly honest? I also think if you wanted to say who is Liverpool's best number 6 with that debate, you've seen him in the double pivot there a couple of times. He's probably our best one, but obviously you don't just want to waste him, shall we say, in that role. But I mean, the Hungarian demigod has got everything. Pace, pressing, even in like the last few minutes, you see it of every game, like pressing right to the end. He is so important to what we're doing, what we're trying to do, and what we're trying to move forward towards. I mean, you shouldn't say this because it is wrong in modern terms, but 61 million sterling in the current climate is incredible value. I shouldn't say bargain in that nature, but just absolutely incredible value. And he's leader, he's well liked. I mean, the biggest hope at the moment is, and I think this is where it's just started to, I want to say tail off, but not hit the high standards that he set himself. And they are such high standards the last few games. I'm just conscious, Trev, we're probably playing him a bit too much, especially for a 22-year-old first season. Did I want to see him used this much in the Carabao? Did I want to see him start against Bournemouth? No. Did I want to see him being used this much in the Europa? Probably not. I mean, it doesn't matter about quality. I know people can argue, in the Champions League, be playing Wednesday, whatever. It's the travel involved. We know the Europa turnaround as well. I just think that sort of regular, I think someone put a stat up earlier, it's something like 70 to 80 minutes, of Liverpool's games that he's played. That I would like to see come down. I think that's just contributing to that sort of, I've got to be careful how I phrase it, but let's just say not hitting the top standards, but nailed on, top quality. We have got an absolute potential legend here. So, yeah, first name on the team sheet in that middle, done.
I'm going to mangle a Cy Brunder stat, and it's my second time doing it, so I can only apologise to Cy. But I don't have it exact in my head. I have it written down somewhere. I meant to. But as you know, I was late arriving to the show this evening, so I just don't have the little few notes I'd scribbled down. But I think you're right in saying that. I think it was something like the Dom has played something like almost approaching 70 minutes, or 70% of the minutes that he would be expected to play at this stage overall. And that's kind of terrifying. However, I mean, look, this is going to rub everyone the wrong way who's got a scientific bone in their body or a medical leaning. But I mean, if you think about our recent history, Jurgen Klopp's had tremendous faith in the players that were comparatively indestructible. In other words, Mo Salah plays every fucking game because you can't break him. I'm really grasping wood here in case anyone's wondering. Luis Suarez for Brendan Rodgers played every single time he was available because Luis Suarez, because you couldn't break him. And because if you took him out of the team, he actually lost rhythm, got annoyed, didn't want to know about not playing. Don Szoboszlai could be one of those guys. That's the only thing I can say. Now, the wisdom of doing that on Brendan and Jurgen's part is another debate altogether. All I'm saying is we have some precedent for it being okay to do that. Now, in terms of what he is as a player, I mean, if you had dreamt up a Klopp midfielder, Dave, could you have done a better job? A guy who's got everything. I remember when I was starting off with this crack with the podcasting, I got an opportunity to go and interview Brendan. Liverpool were playing a pre-season in the Aviva Stadium. And so I got a press pass and I was backstage. I thought it was the dog's bollocks. And I asked Brendan this question. I said, hey, Brendan, lad, what type of player are you looking for? Because it was mid-transfer season. I said, what type of player are you looking for here? What's driving your recruitment? And he took a beat. And then, to be fair, he gave me a great answer, which was multifunctional. He was always going on about multifunctional players. And I thought maybe that's a bit of a Brendanism till we got to the Jurgen era, and he likes them too. He does like lads who can do different jobs because it makes perfect sense. Is Dom Szoboszlai, without putting too much hyperbole on it, is he exactly the right guy? And is his recruitment enough of a justification of the window that nothing else almost matters?
Hey, this is Chuck the Goat from Goat USA. I wanted to break into your podcast and tell you about the new Goat USA store, coming to Garden State Plaza on November 1st. If you love high-quality lifestyle apparel, then get in on the hottest athletic lifestyle brand. Come buy an iconic t-shirt and heavenly soft-hooded sweatshirt and start feeling like the greatest of all time. So come on out to Garden State Plaza in November and get your Goat USA swag. Goat USA, apparel for kids and adults. Chuck out.
Are you that person who has everything? The coolest merch and those must-have fan threads? Well, over at our Anfield Index shop, we've gone that extra mile when it comes to pimping up your Liverpool collection. From our popular range of bespoke design t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies and hats, to our signature edition mugs, prints and coasters, all provided with fast worldwide shipping. We have something for every red. We also stock official LFC merchandise and are licensed with the Premier League and UEFA to sell official iron-on shirt badges and sleeve patches. As a listener to this podcast, you can get 10% off everything with coupon code AIPRO10. Just head over to AnfieldIndex.shop or find us on Etsy by searching for Anfield Index.
Yeah. That might sound dramatic or simplistic, but yeah, I'd agree. It's just crazy when you think that you talk about multifunctional, that Brendan Rodgers landed on Joe Allen, but that's a different discussion for another day. In that regard.
Well, shabby.
Yeah, indeed. But honestly, Trev, he could play the six. He played it against Wolves, didn't he? When he switched at half time in the double pivot. He's done it in a few games. I think it's fair to say he played it at points in the last game against Brentford as well. On the right side, we know he's sensational. He's also played on the left side as the 8, different roles we know at the same time. I think as well, you've seen it because of his pace, his running, his attacking ability. I don't want to see him there, don't get me wrong, but he could play in that forward line as well. I mean, there's even been talk, hasn't there, when Mo goes off for the AFCON in Jan. Would it be the suspicion Szoboszlai might get pushed up? I don't know about that, but the key thing is he could. And you say, Jurgen loves that, doesn't he? All the others he's bought, he loves a player who can play 6 and 8. I don't know, it's a bit weird. We seem to be moving away from specialist positions, so to speak, which you always wonder when people talk about versatility. Maybe it's just me. I get it in my head. It's like versatility can often mean maybe not good enough to be a top starter in a specialist position, but that again might be oversimplifying it. But Big Dom is brilliant in so many positions. The right side of the 8's my favourite, but he does such a cracking job at so many. I mean, we have literally got one of the signings of the summer, if not the signing of the summer, come the end of the season, mate. Brilliant news all round.
I have to agree. And I think this will be the last time I'll say anything like this at the end, but I think he's nailed on in our trio. That's a statement that's fair for us to say. We're not giving anything away really at this point. Everyone's going to expect that. And it's because of the kid's form, and it's entirely his own fault that we think of him in that way. The next man up, and like I said, from here on in, we'll leave it very vague because we're going to be talking about what's the best makeup for us. Next man up is obviously our next most high-profile signing in terms of transfer fee, but probably our highest profile signing in terms of world rating, what with him being a World Cup winner. And that is, of course, Alexis McAllister. And so the issue around Alexis McAllister is that we haven't really gotten a chance to see much of Alexis McAllister as we've seen him before. A lot of people have tried to play down, Dave, the idea of him playing in the 6. I've seen a lot of Galaxy Brain think pieces about it. I've heard some discussions that made my head sort of open up on one side and leak a bit of matter. It's not difficult, Dave. People just need to stop overthinking things. It's not difficult. He is not playing in his best position. That's just a simple fact. He's being asked to do things that he's not comfortable with. Anyone who saw him tracking back desperately as we conceded the last day and then decide to blame him for not being fast enough to get back. I mean, people know this already. If anything, my admiration for McAllister has risen as each week has gone on, because I feel that it's a comparatively thankless thing for him in this Klopp team, because it's not like he's playing a 6 and can be a stroller, because we've got all these incredibly high-functioning defensive units everywhere, flanking him to the right, to the left. His fullbacks are in absolutely primo condition, defending wonderfully, because what he's got behind him and beside him is this hybrid bollocks that we're doing at the moment with the inverted fullback, causing all sorts of chaos down one flank, and possibly not the greatest of defenders helping him out on the other flank. So it is a difficult scenario for this guy. I feel what he's done has been admirable. I won't hear anyone say otherwise. Liverpool fans have a tendency, some of the more extreme ones, not our listeners are sound, to be extreme in their opinions, Dave. It seems to be almost a thing that you do. You've got to say someone's absolutely shite or they're magnificent. Alexis McAllister is a wonderful footballer trying to do a role that he's not enjoying, or at least he's not best suited to. His attitude has been outrageously good from minute one. No sign of a sulk or anything of the sort. In fact, he's talked it up. I can't put any finger of blame on this kid at all. I think, like you said, we already signed a dedicated 6. Sorry, you didn't say that, but you did say we have other people who could do the job. So it's not his fault he's been selected there every single game. I understand what it is they're trying to do, but I think it's exposing the guy a little bit. I have nothing but sympathy for him. I want to see him getting the chance to play where he should be playing, which is why we're going to be getting towards, are we going to buy someone in January? Overall, I'm incredibly high on McAllister, a lot more so than others, for most of the reasons I've said there, and some that I haven't managed to articulate. Where do you stand on Alexis in terms of what he has actually contributed and how you rate him as essential to the side going forward?
When I think about Alexis McAllister, I think about a famous biblical story where after the resurrection, CPS came knocking on Joseph the carpenter's door for back paid child taxes, and all he said at the time was, "This isn't what I signed up for, pal." And it's kind of that feeling towards Alexis, realistically, Trev, that he's doing a role. He's a top guy, as you see. Klopp loves him. You know, he smashes the no dickhead test. I think he's a good footballer. And what's interesting, I know Sam Maguire and a few others have done articles. If you actually look at his stats, they're unreal in terms of like blocks, interceptions. And I know there's almost the eye test element, and that Luton one doesn't look good. But I think the big thing for me about that Luton goal is why we're leaving Alexis McAllister back as the last man. We always normally leave like Trent or Robbo, i.e. people with pace, because that's what you'll need. Like, were people surprised when Chong just burned him? Come on, you know, Alexis got his game. We never leave Fabinho or anyone there. I think too much is being made of that. But he has had good moments. I do think, you know, say the pedigree. He's a World Cup winner, like you said, Trev. We're not giving him a chance to sign in the role you expect, and you want him to play as well. So I think we've seen moments like the assist for Darwin, that brilliant sort of ball over the top against West Ham for that goal. There's been flashes, but what more are you expecting when he's doing the role he's doing? And by the way, he's not doing a bad job as people are making out. Because if it was that bad, would we be, you know, joint best with Arsenal for goals conceded? Would we be, you know, sort of where we are in the table? It wouldn't really compute, would it? So I think there's that context. But I'm like you. I don't really like seeing any panning criticism of him, because it's not what we signed up for. If we still seeing flashes, yeah, I'm okay. More than okay with what Alexis is doing at the moment. More than okay.
And whether or not that fits into our future plans in the short term, we'll talk about later on. However, I do want to bounce this one off you before we move forward. If you were looking at a situation, and far be it from me to go all Nostradamus on it, Downey on it, I think it's fair to say that there's a good chance that this is the plan for the season if we don't recruit in January. So if we don't recruit in January, people are going to have to look at a lot more of Alexis in this position, would be my take, unless Wataru Endo steps up on a level, and we'll get to that. If that was to be the case for the remainder of the season, I'm wondering how you feel about that. Of course, we have to caveat that just before I let you off to run with it by saying that we are a point off the top. And as by reiterating the stat that you mentioned, which we have the joint lowest concession of goals. I mean, take it away.
Yeah, it's one of those. In a way, it would disappoint you, I'm sure. I'm sure it would disappoint many fans because it is a specialist role. You want a specialist there. However, the stats, like we say, unfortunately, can make the counter, almost like they make the counter for the hybrid in essence. But I think if it is to be the case now, I kind of got an inkling it might be that it's not his fault. We've just got to see how we do with it. And it sounds such a corny line, Trev, but time will tell on it. Eh? One of those.
It feels like that. Feels like that. Next up of our new signings, you'll notice we've got here first, and then we're going to go to the lads we already had on contract. Next up is Mr. Gravenberch, and we're only just basically going here by price tags as much as anything else. And with Gravenberch, I think there was, again, not his fault whatsoever, but an element of anticlimax for a lot of people because he wasn't the ball-winning defensive monster that most of us thought was a necessity if you're going to let Fabinho go and the lad who played instead of Fabinho. Does that seem really unreasonable on our part? Does that make us bottom reds or something? Idiots. Anyway, Gravenberch, through no fault of his own, sort of may have had an anticlimactic sort of arrival. But pretty soon, Dave, I think you'll agree, just in terms of some of the more intangible things, he started to make a really good impression on people. He just seems like a good lad with a hugely positive attitude. People could see him training. You see what a unit the lad is for a start. Then he starts making a couple of appearances in the shirt. The physicality and athleticism is probably, if anything, outdone by the delicacy of his touch. He seems to have a fantastic ability in the Dutch mould of being able to play ball, move it on fast, improvise with his feet, play a ball around a corner at speed. All of those things that you want from a progressive midfielder, which is what he is. And I think he had probably, at one point, found himself very much in my top three, along with Dom and Alexis. And I thought, well, it's the new boys, but the combination of energy, athleticism, nous, and ability with those three, I thought was kind of exciting, even if it wasn't spectacularly perfect in terms of the positions. So for me, at one stage, and this would be my giveaway of what I think about him, he had pretty much maybe eased ahead of Curtis Jones to make up a trio that I thought was our best trio at the time. And that's probably as high as I can go on it. I don't know if he's there now, but I think he was at one point. So that's a positive start, right?
Yeah. Matt, there's no other way you could describe Gravenberch's start at Liverpool than massively positive. Already got goals and assists. Like you said, he almost looks, from his physique, he's like an NBA player, isn't he? Like with his height, he's lithe, but he's so strong. He retains the ball well. And I know people talk about pace and big things like that, and I get that. What I always think impresses me is acceleration off the mark. You know, like a standing start. It just goes past people and he's gone before they can react. He's driving towards that back line, Trev. And he's got, like I say, such a delicate touch. He's nice and tidy with the ball. He retains it well. Probably and this puts it in characteristics and in reality. He is only 21. So, you know, for things like consistency, and he's had those struggles at Bayern, he's not really had almost a full season in a top league. So I think you've got to put that in context. But I'd expect a bit of a drop-off at times, and I'd expect, you know, that to be relevant. But overall, I mean, I'm going to be honest, I'm eating my words a little bit based on the start. Still a long way to go. And it's interesting now that he started to pick up a niggle because he is, he covers a lot of ground. And by definition, he is the perfect clock midfielder in that sense, like we talked about before. His resilience, his robustness. Is he made of adamantium like Mo Salah? That will be interesting to see. Hopefully we don't see like loads of little strains and knocks. But overall, from the start, massively positive and looking, I think, 34 million. That Trev, an absolute snip.
Feels like it's going that way. And again, this is us speaking optimistically less than half the way through the campaign. But what else can we do at this point? And that brings us to the final one of our recruits this summer, and we've already name-checked him. It's Wataru Endo. And in the shape of Endo, we have a fella who a lot of people have projected a lot of stuff onto. I think most of us thought at the time that Endo was going to be, we hoped at the time that Endo was going to be a squad filler of class and reliability, a guy who has performed at a high level on a regular basis for many seasons, doing a specific task that we could really do with having in our squad balance. Recycling the ball, winning tackles, intercepting, that type of thing. And I think it'd be fair to say, Dave, that his opening showings weren't really as positive as an awful lot of us would have liked. He seemed at times, I used the phrase the other day, and maybe it's a bit harsh, but for every tackle he won, there was one where he seemed to get monstered in it. Completely overwhelmed, overpowered. And him not being the tallest lad is not necessarily an excuse, I don't think. Everyone's going to take time to come to terms with the physicality of the English game and some of the units he's up against there in midfield. So you allow some time for development, absolutely. I'm just saying that seemed to be the case in the early going. And I was starting to stress that it mightn't have been the greatest and wisest of moves on our part. And then there was a huge period of time where he just wasn't selected at all when there was opportunities to do so. So I feel for the kid, I really do. We've seen a little bit more of him of late, and we had seen a little bit of him. It looked really promising, and then he was gone again. And that's a real Klopp thing to do as well. And you end up wondering, what has Wataru done? Whose, cat has he reversed over? And there's no deliberate insight being given by the manager one way or the other. Again, that's very Klopp. He's not going to give the game away. He doesn't. He likes to waffle when he can and just obfuscate. And why wouldn't he? So I feel a little bit in the dark about Endo. I don't know whether to say that the last few positive signings or showings rather are a sign that he is now in the running in the contention for a starting berth. I'd like to think so, Dave. And I thought I saw enough in the recent showings from him that certainly looked very good. Ironically, more as an 8, if that makes sense. So I'm very interested to see what you make of this guy. I've heard one or two people describe him as looking like a mistake. One or two people saying that it's been a very disappointing bit of business because it wasn't exactly for nothing either. So it is, when we're talking about our lot, they're not exactly making it rain. So we need every few dollars or cents or whatever we can gather together. So a guy at that price needs to make sense. Is it looking like a bad move, a good move? Are you still on the fence with him? Have you seen a few things that you think are hopeful as well? If so, what are those things that you started to hang your hat on with Endo?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, this. And I know you love your literature, so a famous Charles Dickens novels, Great Expectations, and I think that's what he came with, literally because of the summer and what went wrong, if you want to call it that, with the Lavia, the Caicedo, all those sagas, the Decore links. People wanted, didn't they, Trev, that specialist 6 with Fabinho going, the destroyer, whatever you wanted. People had that in mind. I think the context for this is, it came from nowhere, but it's 20 million quid, which in football terms, let's just be clear, in football terms, it's really a pittance, especially for elite football clubs. He's 30 years old. He came from Stuttgart, where I think as well people are ignoring. He played a double pivot at Stuttgart. A lot of people have written about this, whereas we were looking probably for someone who could play the lone six, a specialist in that regard. And then I also look at the bookends of his performances, because when he started out, he didn't play with 11 men, did he? He came on against Bournemouth at home on the first home game, 10 men. Newcastle, he came off because we were 10 men again. And then there's the recent ones against Toulouse, where he could have been lucky to stay on the field, but was taken off at half-time with the yellow card. Being honest, this might sound harsh. I think he plays against Brentford at the weekend just because of the sparsity of options. I don't think he's anywhere near that. But, sometimes you've got to rotate the squad. You're forced. It is what it is. I think the biggest thing that I'm looking at, Trev, in the last 2 games is he looks decent on the ball. And that's where I come from, like you. Almost like an 8. He seems quite, knocking it forward, looking progressive, great. However, he is the 6 in that system. And I think his ground duels, like he won 1 against Brentford. He didn't win any against Toulouse. He's losing the great majority of those duels. And you kind of think from that video clip when he came in at the start of the season and what Klopp said, we are very, very offensive, with the giggle. And you kind of got that intimation, didn't you? This boy is here to seek and destroy, lay it off. That's his job. The only thing I'd also take from Jurgen is, he did mention in his last press conference, he used the example like Andy Robertson. He said it took him a bit of time and people forget. And it was, he came into the team and he was out for Alberto Moreno, which seems just insanely mental saying that now, but there we go. I would like to believe it's something similar. I just think it was a quick and easy example. And Fabinho, wasn't an automatic starter, but for me, 20 million quid from the bottom of the Bundesliga to the top of the Premier League is a massive jump. It feels a bit stopgap-ish. That's not a slight on the player. It's just the nature of what's happened, Trev. That's just right or wrong, honestly, how I see it.
I'm just going to press you a little bit more on the recent outings. Like you say, we got to see him start against Brentford. And I know Dave Hendrick's very fond of pointing out that sometimes these stats can be very misleading in terms of, say, Alexis is really high in all the midfielder stats. And Dave will always say, well, that's, not necessarily a great sign. That might be a sign that he's going around putting out fires left, right and centre. And that it would be a lot better, perhaps, if he was just able to play a more disciplined way where he wasn't required to charge around like a lunatic and cover for defensive failings on the part of his colleague. And, that's sometimes where stats can skew it. And you mentioned the ground duels one. I think you're right. And we both mentioned that we thought we liked the look of him going forward and his passing forward and stuff like that. But was there enough with the eye test for you to make you just at least have a little bit of hope or uncertainty, at least, in terms of that last statement you made where you're thinking, I'm not feeling it, it feels a bit stopgap? Do you have, and was there enough signs on the park, just the eye test, to make you think, this could work?
Yeah, there's signs. I wouldn't say there's overwhelming, compelling evidence, but I'd agree there's signs that, especially on the eye test, that, as we said, he did shift it nicely quite a few times and kept it almost metronomic moving forward, which I liked. I did like that. It's important to say. Probably from the eye test, the one thing I would flag, he just seemed at times like almost just, I won't say half a yard because that's late, but just a snippet behind the pace of the play. And it is a big jump from, say, the bottom of the Bundesliga to the Premier League. So, there was other good signs. He did win a few aerial duels. And listen, I love any player that rocks up to Anfield and puts in a gum shield to get going. Do you know what I mean? There's that sort of element to it as well. But signs, yes. Overwhelming, compelling evidence, not seeing it right now, Trev, have to be honest.
That's completely fair, and I only bring it up because I found myself very much in the same boat as you in your last statement, but I also have this niggling doubt that maybe the Robbo thing may happen and maybe he'll get himself up to speed. So there is, like you say, there's got to be a modicum of hope there. Now we turn to guys who we were already counted as Reds. I'm going to go in this order. I'm going to go Curtis, Harvey, Bajcetic, and then Thiago, and there's a specific reason for that. We'll start with Curtis Jones. Before we say another word, Dave, do you know what the current status is with Curtis between suspensions and injuries, and where are we with Curtis in terms of the City game?
Yeah, good question. We had Media Matters with David Lynch on Monday, and the latest update he gave us was there is expectation that Curtis will be back in after the international break, but we know how Jurgen Klopp setting the scene on injuries work, so fingers crossed on that one.
Okay. It was just, again, because I know you get the latest lowdown with the likes of David Lynch and the like on your media shows, and not to mention the various contacts. So I just wanted to clarify that. That's what I was hoping was going to be the case, but like you say, the vagueness there is often quite frustrating. Let's talk about Curtis. I think a lot of people for a long time have had all sorts of various strange takes on Curtis Jones. Some people overrating him because he was Scouse. Some people massively underrating him because he was Scouse. Some people underrating him because he was British, which you wouldn't like to hear. But that's how, again, some of our lot go on online. And it seemed as if he couldn't catch a break, and there was always people who were looking to hack the back off Curtis Jones. Whereas for me, Curtis Jones has always been a very solid kind of a citizen, with the ability to occasionally do outrageous things like goals like he got against Everton, or a great finish here or there, or a lovely pass or assist. He has in his locker everything you'd want. There was a goal that he scored, one of his most recent goals, where it's a deep ball to the back post. So he just arrives and volleys it, cushions it low and into the net from very little distance, but it's just the technique of it, the absolute confidence you have in Curtis with that type of technique. He also has an engine on him. He has the capacity, I think, to get around the pitch in the way that we need. Therefore, I think putting his hand up as being the guy who best complements possibly McAllister and Szoboszlai, if we want to use them in the more advanced roles that we have in our squad at the moment. Not tipping my hand too early, because I might say that about some other lads here as well. But I think the best thing you can say about Curtis Jones is, despite all that period of uncertainty about him and fan argument about him and all the rest of it, he has enough confidence in himself to keep putting himself forward, and the manager has enough confidence in him to play him now. There was a period of time, Dave, where he wasn't selecting him even though he was fit, and I think we might be over a hump with that in terms of Curtis, in terms of the manager's assessment of what Curtis Jones can offer to the first team, whatever it is that he's looking for from that player specifically. I think, in a nutshell, Dave, that Curtis Jones has...
Hello, I'm here to annoy you. I'm here to annoy you into listening to more of me and more of others on EPL Index. We don't just have the Anfield Index stuff. We've got EPL Index as well, which covers the entirety of the Premier League. And we have 3 podcasts and a whole bunch of really good writing on EPLindex.com. The podcasts are my own two-footed podcast, which is every day at 4 p.m, Monday through Friday, covering the whole league. We have A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. You know Tadiwa, he does Anfield Index. He presents A Tad Predictable before every Premier League match week. And then Kevin DeVries and his crew on the EPL Roundtable, they're every week after the Premier League match week. So make sure you listen to everything we're doing on EPL Index and follow us there on Twitter at EPL Index. Thank you. Bye-bye.
The aura of a starter now.
Yeah, I really, really can't debate that. I think the only negative I really put against Curtis, and literally some of this recently has just been like, I mean, the red card against Spurs is a whole different ball game, but he's been unlucky, and it's sometimes availability is the sort of question mark you can put against him. But let's be clear, Trev, when he's on the pitch, he's so important to our game. He's pressing, he's probably the best counter presser in the team. Almost like, someone described it the other day, Wijnaldum 2.0. Comfortable on the ball, happy to take it in a phone box and hold off 4 players. keeps it simple, but keeps it moving progressively at the same time. And you could just tell now, like you say, Jurgen Klopp has that trust and belief in him, and that's why he starts so many of the big games. He really is. But if it comes to confidence, like you say, it's a confidence job. Curtis is going to start and be captain every day. That is one thing he does not lack whatsoever. But also, I think his physicality gets ignored. He's a unit, so to speak. He's so strong, holding off the opposition with, back to the player, so to speak. And then the other thing that I really like is he does have versatility. I think historically it's counted against him a bit. What I mean by that is, there was the old debate, if you think back to Curtis, like, is he a forward? Is he an attacking midfielder? What is he type of thing? Where's he going to play? Now he seems almost settled in that role, and he is so strong in it. I honestly think as well, I looked to that the tournament that the England under-21s won in the summer. I mean, he was playing a double six, wasn't he, with Angel Gomez there? And he looked so good, so confident on the ball. I think he is the new Ronnie Whelan, and what I mean by that, Trev, is there's always someone that Liverpool fans are going after, aren't they? Despite what they do, and it used to be, Ronnie Whelan back in the day. It's been others, but he seems to be the one right now. But Jurgen Klopp will class him as a very important member of the squad, and he's also been captain in a few games like the Carabao, hasn't he? Yeah, Curtis has really gone up a level in the recent period for me, and big fan of this kid. Big fan.
Do you think, Dave, he has the potential to solve our problem and become that sort of player, despite any real track record of being any sort of a destroyer? When we look at the various attributes that he has, the physicality, the calmness on the ball in possession, the ability to stride away from a footballer with the ball, could he be molded into the guy that we need between now and the end of the season to release Mac into a forward area? Or is that just beyond a skill set that you see there?
It's such a strange one, Trev, because pre-season, that's what we saw, wasn't it? A lot. Curtis was playing that role, the six against Trent in the double pivot, the hybrid, whatever you want to call it, that formation. And then as the season started, Alexis has moved into that role, and Curtis has sort of gone back out to the left. The thing is, I mean, Curtis is so good on that left side that actually, when he does play, it helps Alexis and is so important to the team shape and the overall defensive model. I think he's that strong in that role. That's what happens. And I'm just being a bit conscious of switching them over. I know that's Alexis' natural position on the left, but if we put Curtis there, personal opinion, I'm not sure that balance quite would be what it is now, because he's such an important part for the team there on the left-hand side. So I could get it, and I actually thought that is how we would sort of start the season, but maybe not for me. But I wouldn't nail 1,000% confidence to that, put it that way.
Yeah. Now, next in line in terms of more availability than necessarily Klopp's pecking order for the midfield berths is Harvey Elliott. And to be fair to Harvey Elliott, we've seen some lovely stuff from him in cameos this season. A lot of people are starting to say that he's way more effective coming off the bench, and that when he starts, it's not perhaps as impressive. I would say that that's because he's being started on the right side of a midfield, which is not set up in any way, shape or form to cope with a guy who is not naturally defensive in that berth. It seems to me to be setting him up to fail, I'll be honest. I don't like it. If he's going to start in midfield, I'd much rather he started on the left. I don't understand why that's never an option. As you said, in your notes here, we've got a couple of contrasting performances. He didn't get a run out against Brentford. We saw that substitution at halftime against Brighton. It's interesting and yet a little bit depressing to talk about this every single time that the conversation comes up. But we are in the beggars can't be choosers stage at the moment. And in Harvey Elliott, we have a player who's got possibly in the squad one of the best first touches in terms of being able to control the ball under pressure. He has a tremendous pass on him. He does not lack the confidence to go past the player. He's reasonably safe pair of hands or feet in terms of retaining possession. Now, all of these are very good things for any midfielder to possess. But where Harvey always ends up looking like not a midfielder is when he's charging around trying to make challenges that he's not even getting to, or he's 15 feet behind or hasn't anticipated. And I feel like it's a kind of waste of all of your breath and my breath almost this stage having to have this conversation. But honestly, when I listen to, the likes of the pundits who get paid a fortune to go on Sky, they don't seem to acknowledge this, Dave. They just say, well, he's a midfielder because, I don't know, they're just dopes or something. Harvey Elliott's a wonderful player and deserves his place in our squad and deserves, I think, perhaps to be getting an odd 15 minutes here or there for either Mo or whoever's on the far flank on a regular basis, and maybe the occasional start in the cup for Mo or whoever's on the far side. Jurgen wants to use him in this midfield position. I'm going to rest my case after this and not say it anymore on any podcast. But we're talking about the midfield now, so I thought it was relevant. Where are you on Harvey Elliott as a starter, a potential starter, in terms of his progress so far and what he might mean for us for the rest of the season?
There are a lot of positives with Harvey. I mean, he's clearly well liked. He's a Liverpool fan. He seems very popular, with the fans for good reasons. There's a lot to like there from an attitude perspective. Works hard, like you said. Got very good technically, or all those types of things. The problem or the crux of it, Trev, is he's great in the cameo. He's great, and he actually is one of the players we can bring off the bench on occasions that can change things or make an impact, like he's done against Wolves. The assist for the goal against Luton. He's got a good cameo in him. He's not a starter, Trev. He's not a starter. It's that simple. Look at Brighton away, brought off. Even the games he started, there's been the odd flashes, but it never really works. I mean, for me, it was quite telling that, look at Brentford, giant, people were like, oh, you can't start because they're tall, they're behemoths, they play an aerial game. It's like, well, if he was that good, you take the trade off, but he doesn't play. It's simple as that. Now, it's also been said, it's not new news, Harvey Elliott will be brilliant as a 10. He kills that for England under 21s, doesn't he, when he plays there? He's absolutely sensational. Don't play with a 10. It's not really too dramatic, I think, than that. And it's going to be interesting over the next 2 years, because Jurgen seems pretty set, Trev, that Harvey Elliott is going to be a midfielder, if anything. That he's almost abandoned that. He could replace Mo or cover for Mo, if you want to call it that, with Ben Doak and others. He seems very set that Harvey Elliott, if he's going to get minutes, is a midfielder. So in that essence, Harvey's got to get his game to a high enough stage that he can bridge the gap between the physicality issues and what Jurgen's looking for to go, no, that's overridden with his skill, his technical ability, all those types of things. This isn't to do down the kid in any way. Will he do that? There's got to be a question mark against it. But just for now, right now, good cameos. I'll look at the positive that way. Yeah.
Anyone who's looking at the positives of Anfield Index new video wonderland that we're participating in this evening would be able to see from you and I that you're a younger man than me, Dave. However, you are at least old enough to remember when left-footed lads played on the left and right-footed lads played on the right. Now, I don't want to sound like old man shakes fist at cloud. I do want to ask you a simple question here because it's fitting into our conversation. And I can already see the way this is going and the clock, and we just have time to do one of the things that we said we'd do. That's cool. We'll get another show out of it. So the question I have for you, do you not see a world where Harvey Elliott could be swapping in and out with Luis Diaz and being hugely effective for us? Or if Jurgen insists, swapping in and out with Mo Salah and being hugely effective for us in a forward position. But could we ever just possibly see him on the left? Wouldn't that be great? Why would you, is it a policy thing, do you think, or a managerial preference to have the wingers with the ability or the necessity to cut inside to use their favourite foot.
Yeah, I think like the history tells us, and what the eye test tells us as well, that is how Jurgen prefers it to be, prefers it to set up, whatever you want to call it. I would be intrigued by it, but the thing is, I just don't think it will ever happen. I mean, I would love to see something like him giving a go in, like you say, a 4-2-3-1. I'd love to see us try that, a variation with him in the 10 that way. But on the other side, Trev, if we played a 10, and this is me advocating it, by the way, there'd be other people screaming, well, there's better options there. Imagine if you put Gakpo in the 10s, and all that. So I would like to see it. Do I think we will? Can't envisage it, mate. Got to be honest.
I agree completely. Last two are what feels like perma-crocs. We're going to start with the kid, Bajcetic, who had a tiny injury a long time ago and is still unavailable. I still have no idea what the clock is on his return, to be honest with you. I've heard all sorts of conflicting reports. Again, you might have clarification for us, or if not clarification, a better idea at least than I do. And I know you want to consider the possibility as we talk about Bajcetic now, because he is like a notional concept, much like the next man we're going to talk about, a sort of a myth like Kaiser Soze that you tell your children about. But instead of wanting to scare them, you're trying to make them feel happy thoughts. And the idea of young Bajcetic and the lad we're going to talk about next actually being reality in our squad would be lovely. Unfortunately, it's not real at the moment. And with Bajcetic, you have to hope he's going to get over it and get back and be a permanent fixture long term. Is there a world in which actually we've just been, as you said earlier on, it tends to haunt Jurgen Klopp, is lack of luck at times? I know people will find that hard to believe, but look at all the finals the lad's lost. He is not the luckiest man in the world. Is he just unfortunate here that Bajcetic isn't around and absolutely at tip-top form to maybe make himself a very young but possible candidate for this most withdrawn role, or part of a double pivot with Alexis or something like that? Is that a hope that you would have if and when he returns?
Oh, if and when he returns, I would like to see it tried. I really would, especially if we're not going to go for anyone. I would really like to see him given a crack, see how he gets on. I mean, the latest update, because it was interesting, David Lynch actually asked the question of Jurgen Klopp for Thiago and Bajcetic in the last press conference, and was actually, the long story short, was actually told that they didn't put a time scale on Thiago and Badger's return, that we'd just have to, wait and see. Well, actually, I'm lying a bit there. They did say about Thiago in the new year and they're hoping for January, but Badge, we're just going to take it and see how it is. So it's kind of there is no time scale on his return, which for me doesn't bode well, Trev. It really doesn't. It's almost like this is a man in a boy's body. It really is. I mean, look how long a minor injury, as you said, has turned into a long-term issue from last season. He was supposed to be back in pre-season, then, little knocks. And I get after a long-term injury, we've seen it. People have other things. People forget, like Luis Diaz's double surgery issues, that type of thing. That does happen. But the big question mark against Stefan Bajcetic is there is zero proof his body is up to the rigours of a long season. And not just a long season, Trev, a Jurgen Klopp midfield long season. You know what's expected of them. It's a huge app, which, I'll be honest, is a real shame for me, because from what we've seen of this kid, and it's only a small sample size, you've got to be clear on that. I think people get a bit carried away. But there was massive promise in a small sample size, and we'd love to see it again. But even when he does come back, the negative, it's going to take him time to get back up to speed. How long? It's also not like he's got a pre-season, has he? It's straight into the thick of it if and when he comes back. But I would love to see him given a chance, Trev, because there was huge promise last season. I can't stress that enough. There really was, especially when we were struggling.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes and games consoles. Visit libertyshield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
The reality, though, the physical nature, his body, there's a lot of question marks there. That's the unfortunate part, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree entirely. It's terrible to have that lack of certainty around a player who, I think there was enough of a sample size to be excited about, for sure. The potential there looked massive. And so you would hope that whatever that tiny, etc., Manny Tiny's injury is soon a thing of the past. But I like you, I really worry when there's not even a ballpark being thrown out there. You mentioned that Thiago Alcantara might be back in January, but then again, pigs might fly. As they say, poor Thiago has been injured since April, and as a result has become, like I say, more of a concept than a reality in Liverpool fans' mind. Now, let me tee this up by saying, Dave, that a lot of people are very high on all our various midfielders who won lots of trophies for us. Gini Wijnaldum might be one of my favourite men ever. And so I'd rate him far higher than I think an awful lot of people in terms of the importance of his role in our successes. People have seen the careers of Steven Gerrard and many other wonderful players like Xabi Alonso and Mascherano. But there were many times, Dave, in the era that Thiago's played for us where I thought, I don't think I've seen anyone better than that ever. And I'm including my podcast chum, Jan Mulby, in that. I thought he might be, at times, as good as anyone I ever saw pull on a jersey. I said that to Jan, and he agreed that there's something magical about this kid when he's absolutely on it. And he's quite often absolutely on it. In fact, the only times he wasn't really on it was when he was being asked to do the frickin' six role. And he was barreling around, hacking into lads, getting yellow cards every second minute and looking completely and utterly as if he was being wasted, which he was, because we were so short on options. Now, there's a fairy tale part of me that would love to think Thiago could come in the new year and have a huge impact on us actually winning something big and having a really successful season. The pessimist in me says that there's no chance of that happening. The optimist in me says I think it might happen. That's the same two voices that talk to me about winning titles and leagues and all that kind of stuff. If he does come back, Dave, I think we need to be very clear on this. He is not going to be, despite what some of those professional pundits that I spoke about earlier on said, he is not going to be the freaking solution. Him coming in does not mean all of a sudden McAllister's released to go forward and fly free as an 8, because then you're playing Thiago as the 6 again, and that's just stupid. It doesn't work. It's not good. We've seen it, and the sample size we've seen is adequate enough to know that it's not the solution for a successful team. Where we want to see Thiago as being progressive and being the best passer on any football pitch he ever steps on. So, where are we with this guy? Did we miss a trick to be absolutely cynical about it in not moving him on and possibly moving his wages on if you want to be extra cynical? Or was it too much loss in terms of seniority around the squad to even countenance Thiago not being around this crew?
Yeah, I mean, hindsight's 2020, isn't it? As they always say. I mean, Thiago Alcantara, as you said, utterly majestic footballer. Let's be clear, he's given us some of the best footballing days we've had, and some of the performances he's put on. Where he's just sort of orchestrated that whole pitch. Everyone there have been absolutely unreal. An unbelievable player. It's great. Magician, as you said, a wonderful technician, to borrow an old Brendan phrase there as well. But then there's the other side to it, Trev, that, you look at his injuries, his availability. I mean, we kind of knew when we were getting him from Bayern that the injury record was patchy. He only played a certain number of minutes, a certain number of games a season. We were well aware of what we were getting into, but that still didn't stop it. I was looking at it and being, 20 million or so for Thiago is an absolute bargain. And he's been brilliant. The problem is now, Trev, it's almost sad what's happening. And I talked about hindsight being 2020. If you look back to the summer, the Saudi murmurings happened. There was Fenerbahce, Besiktas were around. There was talk of Sevilla, wasn't there? It was quite clear there were offers, and he said it himself, and Jurgen said it. They had that meeting in the summer. Now, the amount you would have got for him would have been huge money in midfield terms. I'm not pretending that for any reason whatsoever. However, you talk about his wages. I mean, suggestions are he is one of the top earners, around 200 grand a week, which is understandable because of where he came from, the pedigree, all that type of thing. Have we missed a trick maybe in moving him out? What I know now, he's not really been there, has he? I could have counted instead. I could have counted it's him going out and getting that 6 in. But that is a perfect scenario. I totally hold my hands up to that. And, it might be 2 and 2 and getting 27 in that regard. The sad thing is, I hate myself for saying it, because when he's fit, when he's available, he's one of the first names on your team sheet. When he's fit and when he's available, he makes Liverpool tick. The way he controls that tempo. We all love that little drop of the shoulder, don't we, Trev? That little turn and spin and embarrassing someone. We love it. We've seen him control those games against the Uniteds of this world, at the big events. It's so sad to say, but my gut actually tells me I cannot say with certainty we're going to see him back in a Liverpool shirt, or if we do, maybe a handful of times at best, almost like a nostalgia or a Legends tour type of thing in the last 6 months. So it is sad to say, but I just do not really count on Thiago anymore. I have to be honest with it. Sad but true.
It is sad but true. The truth of it is undeniable. Barring some sort of miracle return and newfound resilience between now and the end of the year, that's just the reality that we face. I'm hoping that he's doing all sorts of magical things just by being Thiago around the place in the background, and that he can contribute between now and the end of the season, which I think will absolutely be the last we'll see of Thiago Alcantara, especially if he can get himself back fit and get himself a move. I would imagine that will happen because you'd like to think we will recruit in the summer, if not in the winter. Now, I am looking at the clock and I'll tell you what, young Davis, we like to talk. We've managed an hour almost, and I want to keep it to the hour or so. And we've only just gotten round to our first thing that we wanted to finish off with, which is talking about these midfield rankings. We're going to do that to finish the show now in a sec. If it's okay with you, I think what we might do is maybe see, can we find another topic to add into talking about the City game, which will be more poignant again next week, and perhaps talk about a potential recruitment, not just for midfield, but expand it out a bit, where I think you might have a few tasty morsels for us in other areas of the park. How's that feel to you as a teaser for another one before the international break is over?
Feels like a tasty little spoiler headed into the transfer show build-up, doesn't it, eh? Works for me.
Works for me too. I like it. Okay, with that in mind then, let's finish our discussion today, which I've enjoyed tremendously walking through our midfield, minefield, to use a certain Draw Demands expression. And I wanted to talk to you about where it is that you would rate these guys. We've mentioned 8 guys. Let's rank them 1 to 8. Now, I'm going to just bounce this off you. Are we going to say 1 to 8 in terms of the most important? Let's do it this way. 1 to 8 in terms of the most important that you view them as the most important to Liverpool for success this season. That way we can kind of let ourselves off the hook a bit, because there's going to be a couple of lads down low on that list who should be up high on the list but won't be, if you understand what I'm saying. So 1 to 8 of the 8 lads we've talked about in terms of importance to this season for Liverpool. Off you go, sir.
Top, it's got to be Big Dom, the Hungarian demigod himself. Nice and easy for me. Second, which will surprise people, I think, would be Alexis McAllister. I think he's playing the 6. That's the way it's set up. I think it's what Jurgen's going to be entrenched and determined to do. So he comes number 2 for me. Number 3, Curtis Jones. And listen, Curtis could have easily been number 2, but especially on that left side for me, the pressing, the counter-pressing, the retention of the ball, Wijnaldum 2.0 almost, so crucial. This is where it starts to get a little bit tougher. I actually think he's pushed himself into the 4th spot, and he's looking ahead, looking up to the sort of the Champions League positions, one of a better phrase, but young Ryan Gravenberch has come in and made his mark straight away. He's got an injury now. He's not always been brilliant, but, he's 21 years old. The ceiling with this kid is massive. And would it surprise me if he's pushed himself into the top 3 by the end of the season? Absolutely not. But that is my top 4. Now, moving down into the second half, Trev, this is where it gets a bit more complicated. I've gone Harvey Elliott 5th, but I'm going to be honest on this. The gap between 5th and 8th isn't as big as people may think. Doesn't mean it's non-existent, but not as big as people think. Harvey Elliott's proven himself a good cameo, a good option off the bench. He can make things happen. From the start, not for me, not what I'm seeing. We've not got enough evidence on that. In 6th, good old Wataru. I think he seems a great lad. I love the gum shield. I love the whole thing. But I think as time goes on, I would love to be proven wrong with this, Trev. But I think he gets to start against Brentford because all the aforementioned people above him aren't there. That's why. But I would love to see him really push up those rankings. And then 7th and 8th. It's the 2 who are injured. This sounds terrible to say. I've gone Thiago 8 because I still have a sneaking suspicion we might not even see him just a handful of times this season. So in that context, that's why he's 8. Christ, if it's his ability, he's nowhere near that. We're switching to enter the scale. But in terms of this season, I just get a feeling that we're going to see Badge before Thiago. Could be wrong, but they're probably fighting over 7th and 8th. And that is my rankings for this.
Let me surprise you by saying that there's a crossover, but there are a couple of differences. 7 and 8 have to be 7 and 8, like you just said. They just have to be. So we'll focus on my top 6 now in a second. They have to be because we can't rely on either of the guys being back. Yeah. And Thiago's probably the less reliable of the 2. You'd like to think a young guy coming back is going to be then available for a while.
Yeah.
With Thiago, we have evidence to the contrary. It's sad, but true. In terms of 1 to 6, I would contrast with you because we're talking about the most important for our success this season. McAllister's top of my list there because I think if he starts to play well, if he starts to really, really impress, then we're going to be good. You know what you're getting from Dom Szoboszlai. He's just a wonderful footballer and he can do it in all these different positions. I don't think he'd be enough to carry us to success if McAllister is struggling. So therefore, McAllister has an extra level of importance in this. For me, Dom's obviously number 2 because he's so good and because he can win matches. And then I think it's very much the same as you. Curtis Jones comes in at 3 based on an awful lot of different categories. And I'd love to see him being that permanent member of that team for now and for until the end of the season. I'm going with Harvey Elliott next as well, because for me, Harvey Elliott is a potential match winner off the bench. As a midfielder, though, he's 5. He could be much higher in other areas. And equal 5th, I mean, there's no difference between 5th and 6th for me, is Endo, because I think, again, if Endo has a good season, it will mean good things for us. And he could be just as valuable as Harvey Elliott if he can help us shut games out. So it's absolutely on a knife edge between the two of them in terms of how I rate their importance to our potential this season. And then the other two lads are the other two lads. But I like what we did there. We managed to make it a bit different. So it's not all as predictable. I agree with Dave and I agree with Trev, which we often quite managed to do quite well. So delighted. We never, by the way, in case you think, folks, we don't ever compare notes in advance. This is always off the cuff. It's the way we like to do it. And like I said, we'll have a chance. I'm not losing the plot, am I, Dave? We have another week, right, of this international crack.
We do. Yeah, so, another week.
So let's try and get one in next week for the good people. We'll flash up that we're going to talk about some potential January activity. We're going to talk about the City game and the best lineup, including and specifically the midfield for that. And hopefully with a bit more information about the return of Jones and stuff like that for that show. But for now, we'll wrap this one up. Just gone north of an hour. Always enjoyable as ever to chat to you about whatever the topic is. So for another good one, Dave, cheers very much.
Cheers, pal. Nice to catch up.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at anfieldindex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
Sports Social Podcast Network.